So I think one of the main benefits of this is that it's easier to build, it's easier to deploy, it's easier to understand. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to show you what I think is the newest version of the best way of building in Notion. A long time ago, my first video, at least on YouTube for Notion, was about how I started building in a really unique way in Notion, and I called it the perspectives method. And it really feels like an application within Notion. But over the last couple of years, I've figured out new and I think better ways of deploying the same kind of methodology of perspectives, but in better and maybe even easier ways, especially as new features have come out in Notion. And so today I want to show you the latest way that I have begun to deploy Notion or build in Notion using perspectives. And especially for those of you who have kind of reworked your entire system. I see many comments from people, and I love to see it, that they've rebuilt their entire Notion system using perspectives. I want to show you what I think is now the best way to do it for most cases. And so probably better if we just jump in and show you exactly what I mean, and then I'll show you how I build it. And then if you are familiar with the old way, you can kind of compare it, but I'll kind of tell you some of those benefits of doing it this way rather than the other way. And I'll also talk about some of the reasons why you might want to stick to the old way. So in the old version of perspectives, what we do is we build this kind of what feels like an application within Notion, and I call it the perspectives pack. So if we go back one page, what we're actually looking at is a database. So all of this lives in a database, and I'm not going to go over how to do this because this is in an old video. I'll show you the new way, but this is the old version in a database, hosting these pages, and then you create the kind of main landing page of whatever application. So maybe we're making a project manager. We'd call this project manager, copy this link, go back to our HQ, put that link there. And then when we jump into this project manager, what we can do is create these perspective views. So maybe this one would be, projects. And now we have this projects window. But as I build in these new perspective views, they all kind of maintain and persist with this navigation. And so then I could do another one, maybe it's recurring tasks. And what I do is I build a view of recurring tasks here. Okay, so again, go back and watch the old video if you're really curious on that. What I want to show you is a new way of building in perspectives that does not require a database. I think it'll be a lot more approachable and easier for people to use. So we're looking at a project manager for this kind of mock company team space that we've been covering over the last few videos and building this out as we go. And this is a project manager for this fake company called LunarCo. And this is on their Lunar HQ. So this is kind of that main landing page for the entire company. And then we can jump into project manager. So for you that are familiar with the old way of doing this, you'll notice that this is not a link. This actually just lives directly on the HQ page. The application is now a actual subpage of the HQ. So instead of having to house my pack databases in somewhere, some other place and then link them on whatever HQ, I just build them directly. So one of the main benefits, especially for a larger company, of doing it this way that was not possible with the database version is that a lot of people actually follow the breadcrumbs up at the top. We really try to build this UI UX that does not require using the sidebar or even the breadcrumbs. We like to, include navigational elements like this return to Lunar HQ button that takes you directly back, and then you can jump into other team hubs or other applications. The idea is that it should feel like dedicated software or like your own website, and then the things that are kind of going on in Notion, like the sidebar and the breadcrumb, are almost like this back-end feature that you don't necessarily want to rely on. However, realistically, most people actually use and like features like the breadcrumb. So what happens is when we do it in the database, because we have to house that database somewhere else, people end up following the breadcrumb back, they get stuck in the database, they're lost. It's a little confusing, and I kind of understand why. In this case, the project manager is actually just sitting right on that HQ page. So if somebody were to, especially a new user, were to follow the breadcrumbs backwards, they're able to get somewhere actually useful. They're not stuck in some database view like they would be with the previous version. So how does this actually work? This project manager, this is the main, what I would call the landing page. So we're still building it. It still functions the same way. You'll just notice that there's no database list here. These are just pages. And when I hover over, you'll see that red outline around all of this, and that's because this is a synced block. So instead of using a database view, we're using a synced block. Along the way, it just kind of begged the question, what is the purpose and benefit of using a database versus just housing these pages like this? And there are still some cases, like my perspectives journal, where you'd still want to use the database, but in most cases, I think this is actually a lot better. So we're looking at this landing page for Project Manager, and then all of these pages are just sub pages of Project Manager. So because they live in this synced block, this navigational element will show up on every single one. And obviously you can see this is kind of a dummy one that I copied the structure from a different project manager. But what we have is this navigation synced block that's on every single one. So what we end up with is essentially the same thing. We're building this application within Notion, and we're able to give ourselves these really focused perspective views for jumping into each one, but it's still flexible and scalable. So what I'm not doing is telling you how to build or structure your life or your company. All I'm doing is giving you a framework for building it in Notion in a consistent way, one that's helpful, one that helps you focus on very particular elements, but then you can really build it to suit whatever process you need to do in Notion. And that's what we really like to enable in Notion. And I think that's the most beneficial way to look at Notion, is by building software for your process, not having to force your process to fit the mold of whatever software you buy. So this is kind of that middleman between the blank page shock of Notion, or where you feel like anything's possible. You build dashboards and they all function differently. But in this case, I'm giving you a layer in between where it's a structure to Notion, but it's not a structure to your process. The reason why Notion can be so enticing and yet so confusing is that it mixes the actual data content that you need in Notion with the structure of the software. You're mixing this front end and back end. So when I'm building this project manager page right here, this is structural. I'm building this kind of application for myself, this dashboard. But these objects right here, like lunar soil research, are pages just the same as the project manager is a page. But in this case, this lunar soil research project is representing some abstract data that I need to manage. So it's this project for lunar soil research, and inside of it there's even more breakdowns of information within it, so it can get really convoluted. So what Perspectives is just a systematic approach to building the framework of your Notion workspace, that UI UX kind of component of your workspace, and it still frees you up to manage your data and build your process however you need. So in this case, we've broken up this project manager by different, types of things that you might be concerned with when you're doing project managing. So we're thinking in terms of applications rather than dashboards. So we have this task pool, and then we've got our main projects that we still have active. And then if we were to build in some sort of flagging mechanism, we'd have them flagged here and filtered and sorted to show flags. But all of this is to build this application for project managing, and you'll see that it's alongside some others. Like we, in a previous video, built a file finder, and this one is to help manage files. And this is just one opinionated way of building files that I've used Perspectives for, but you don't have to do it this way. You don't have to break down your files by these affinity groups. You can do it in whatever way you want. However, we both could still use Perspectives to manage our files. I've just chosen this kind of way, whereas you could do the same thing and choose a different kind of way of managing files, but they both use Perspectives. And this file finder is using the same structure and framework as the project manager. So that's what I want to kind of really nail down, is that what Perspectives is the framework, these kind of software UI that you can use, and then you can still flex and scale. What I mean by scale is that you are not kind of locked in once you build this. I've got these really fast abilities to build new perspectives per application or deploy new applications really quickly. And so in this project manager, I've even got one already kind of pre-made that I didn't mean to have on there, but I can make a new one. So I started calling these a little differently since this is kind of a new version for me. So instead of perspectives, I was calling these slates. You can call them perspectives, whatever. We press this button, it makes a new perspective, and it's going to show up, and then I can make this and modify this for whatever is useful for me. So once this loads, actually, we'll be able to open it up, and what we could do is, maybe these are like high priority tasks or something like that, and then we've got the important little icon. I'm designing my own software right now. I'm building my own application. And then I would pull in the task database. So I could go find it in my data page, which is right here. Grab tasks, copy the link, go back. And then when I paste this, what I want to do is essentially just the intuitive thing, which is if I'm calling this perspective high priority tasks, what do I then need to do to shape this data so that it actually meets this expectation when I come to this page? If I expect high priority tasks, let's make sure that I've designed my data in a way that I can filter and sort it to show me high priority tasks. So in this case, I don't have anything currently on my task database that would allow me to show or see high priority tasks. I don't have any property to it. So if we, open up a page, one of these tasks, there's no property. I just have it done, right? And this is where it's up to you to design your own process. There are so many ways to prioritize your task. You could do it with many different statuses. You could do it with a checkbox, whether it's high priority or not. You could do it with statuses or selects or multi-selects, whatever. It's up to you. So this is where I'm not going to give you too much of an opinion on how to actually build a project manager. I just want to show you the framework. So if this checkbox, really simple yes or no, is representing priority, and I check them to be priority, now I have the data structure to show a high priority task. So what I want to do is filter by this priority is checked. Save that. And now we effectively have this high priority tasks view. And in any of our other task views, like the task pool, we'll see this priority column is there, but we're not really filtering or sorting on it currently. We could change that. But what I can see now with this high priority tasks is if I find that useful for my workflow, now I have this view. And I might also filter this, keep this in mind. You're designing your own process and then building software for it. I probably also want to filter this to where if it's done, I don't want to see it, whether it's priority or not, because I don't really care. The task is done. So what I want to do for this is to add another little filter and really fine tune this where the priority is checked, but done is also unchecked, because I don't really want to see anything that is checked. So if I were to check one of these as done, it will go away. So anytime I want to make a new application, I'll start out with a template that I already have pre-built so that I don't have to build it from scratch every time. And I would definitely recommend doing it. But we're gonna look in this template and see how it's built so that you can build it yourself. Or I will include a link in the description for you to just download this and play with it yourself if you struggle to figure out how it's built. But I would highly recommend learning how it's put together so that you know how it functions. So in this template, we have just, again, this page, but we also have what I want to include in every new slate or perspective that I'm going to create for this application, for this pack, right? So I have this sync block, and this lives on this slate template. And we have a link, this slate template, this page, I have linked to itself right here. And again, it's in the sync block. So when I go to new pages, it's also going to be available for me to come back to this page. And then we have a button that is return to HQ. This just opens the main page in full page, just a little navigation trick. I could use a link, but I like to use the button. And then we have this new slate button, which creates a new page. So this can get a little tricky to kind of wrap your mind around, because we're gonna kind of inception some pages with the sync block. So this is the main page. And then this new slate page, we want to go into this, and this new slate page that it creates, we also want to include this synced block. So make sure that the main synced block lives on the template. This is the original. And then when you go to create this button, and this button just does button is clicked, insert block above button, this page. When we design this page, we want to take that sync block, and we want to make two columns. So here's one column, here's the other column, and we want to paste that synced block here. And once we do that, anytime we update anything in this synced block, it will update across all of them. So if I were to add, hi on this template page, we're editing a template in a button right here, and I go back to the actual main page, it shows hi. So now we've got this persistent navigation going on, and every time I press this button and it creates a new page, each of those pages are going to look and feel exactly like this page, which starts to make it feel like you're actually not going to a new page. It kind of makes it start to feel like you're only changing this kind of content right here while maintaining a very dynamic navigation bar. It's dynamic because it's only for this particular application, whereas the sidebar is not dynamic because it's just showing you everything that you have in the sidebar for your entire workspace. So it's a small, subtle little change, but it actually really changes the way you view your software. And it's probably much more familiar to you and more intuitive to you than you think. You probably take it for granted because you've been using software for, probably your whole life at this point. And so these little things that we just take for granted from software we've used previously, just like getting in a car and driving it because you've had experience in a totally different car, we want to take advantage of that as much as possible. And so that's kind of how it goes together. And when we create this new slate right here, I'm in the slate template. So if I were to actually make a new application, what I would do is duplicate this, and then I would move this to, in this case, I just have them sitting on Lunar HQ. So I'd visit that, put this over here. So again, this is a little different than the old version of Perspectives where we had to build it in a database and then copy the link and all that. So what I want to do here is then open this, and now I can just go from here and start building out an application. So whatever that would look like, maybe it's, product management. And what I can do now is just create a new slate. This has duplicated what was in that button that I just showed you. And when I click on it, we're opening up a new page and it looks the same as product management. We've got that kind of header, so it's kind of bumping things down a little bit. I could remove that. And so now you'll see that they look, they're a little off, but they look almost exactly the same. And that's the trick, is when you go into that template page here, right here, this new slate one, you want to adjust it and try to make it the exact same size so that every time you make a new one, they are the exact same. So there's like a little bit of a difference in width, but I don't care too much. And now what I do is start building out what is, going to be good for me for product management. And like you've seen in maybe previous videos, we have also the same kind of structure, not only for these applications, but also for our teams. And so this research team, when I jump into it, I also have built this in a way where I can jump into these sub teams rather than, applications. So I've got propulsion, this one's empty, so that's why it's looking like that. But we can build this in many different flavors. So again, it's just a structure for the way you build in Notion. So I think one of the main benefits of this is that it's easier to build, it's easier to deploy, it's easier to understand, and it also makes it easier for people using it to be able to still rely on the breadcrumbs to find where they're looking for. The main benefit, if you really think about it fundamentally, of having something in a database is that you have the properties and things to filter and sort on. But in the case of most applications, you really don't need to filter and sort on those pages. What do I mean by that? In this project manager, these perspectives right here, I don't really need to filter and sort these. But by putting them in a database like I used to, that's really the main benefit that gets unlocked. When I first did Perspectives, there was benefit to the creating a page with a template and opening it in full page. But I think with buttons and pages and sync blocks kind of advancing since then, it kind of really takes away some of those reasons to use a database. So if I don't need to filter these like I did in the previous ones, or use, like the hide from view or the sort order one, which we no longer have to use anymore, this makes it a lot easier. So a good example of a application that would actually benefit from having it in a database, and this is kind of up to your discretion for what you want to use, is something like my Perspectives journal. One example of something that would actually benefit from using the older database modeled version is the Perspectives journal. And I have a previous video where I showed this Perspectives journal. It's basically a digital bullet journal, and even have a template that you can buy. But this Perspectives journal, I think actually really does benefit from the database kind of model that we used. And that is because right here, I'm able to filter on the different types of pages. So this is a different flavor. Instead of creating these perspectives, for different areas of the application, what I've done is I've used the same kind of framework, but these pages now represent actual objects. So in the bullet journal method, these would be the different spreads like daily, weekly, monthly, future log, and project and information spreads. You can watch that video if you want to learn more about how this works. And of all the productivity systems I actually build and use, this is the one that actually has helped me the most, and I keep coming back to on a regular basis, even though it's kind of anti dynamic databases and all that stuff. It requires some manual effort, but for me, that actually helps me a lot, because every day I have to remind myself and think about what I want to put on my task list for the day, rather than relying on the system to just show me the same thing every day. That doesn't really force me to ask the question, what's important and what is no longer important. So I love this perspectives journal, and it really benefits from this approach because I can filter based on the different types of page spreads that I have. So this perspectives journal is just one of many different ways you can use perspectives for building out your structure. So again, I want to show you kind of non-opinionated ways of building in Notion so that you can build for yourself. One last piece to mention, you may have noticed that I have moved the navigation of the perspectives bar over here to the right side rather than the left side. And when I asked people online on Twitter what they thought of left versus right, I actually got pretty mixed answers on which they preferred. So again, this is up to preference. I like it on the right because I like to see my content first, and then I like to see my navigation over here. I'm an English reader and writer and speaker, so left to right is the way my eyes typically work. And so I think it actually helps a little bit to see your stuff first. But also, I think we're seeing a wave of software put their navigation on the left, and Notion obviously is one of them. You have the sidebar that pops out. New apps or things like Arc web browser, they have it on the left. So I think we're seeing an influx of that, and I think having a bunch of navigations on the left, while being intuitive, because that's what everyone else is doing, can be kind of annoying in its current state with Notion having it on the left. It just is like too many things on the left, and I don't really like it. But I think really the biggest reason why I moved it over is just because the sidebar automatically pops out. And when you're trying to come over here, if it was on the left, so many times I'd be trying to navigate to another page and that sidebar would pop out, and it's just really annoying and I don't like it. And if there was just a simple toggle in Notion to maybe turn off this ability of the sidebar to pop open like this, because you can still press this button and pop it open, I would love that. And I might actually go back to the left, because I like to depend on Notion navigation without using the sidebar. So I really most of the time don't have the sidebar open, because I like to create my own environment that relies on itself. It's self-sufficient. It doesn't depend on the breadcrumbs or the sidebar. So that is really the main reason why I put it over on the right side. A lot of people asked about mobile views. And so if you're opening this page on mobile, the difference is you'll now see your content first, and then at the bottom of the page, it will put the navigation. Some people prefer to have their navigation at the top of their mobile page. I personally would rather see the content that I'm looking for and then go and scroll down to get somewhere else. However, if it really mattered to me, and if I'm being honest, I don't use my mobile phone for Notion very often. If it really mattered to me, I would just build a mobile specific dashboard for some of the things that I want to deal with on my phone, and just make it probably a lot more simpler. I probably wouldn't use columns. I may not even use perspectives. It would just be a simpler page layout for the sole focus and sole use of mobile. But again, the preference is up to you. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer here. I personally like it on the right side. Let me know in the comments if you like it on the right or the left side. And let me know if you are also going to use this newer, maybe simpler version of doing perspectives in a synced block. And of course, let me know if you have any further questions or if you want me to dive more into detail on some aspect of this. But I wanted to give you a quick kind of tour and overview of the new way that I'm building in Notion using kind of the same, I would still consider it perspectives, but it's different. Perspectives is a methodology that doesn't care so much the technical way that you build a Notion, but it's about building in a framework around applications. Just the same way that you have applications on your phone, think of Notion as the environment, like your operating system. And now instead of having to download apps from the App Store that somebody else made, you have the ability to make your own application. That can actually be kind of scary to a lot of people because they don't actually know what they want. They want somebody else to tell them. But for those of you who are up for the challenge and want to build a system that actually works for you and how you think, or maybe even your team or company, it's just a way of thinking and grouping the things in your life or your company in terms of applications or some sort of pool of focus. So in this case, this one's project management. And so just by jumping in here, we're already in the mindset of, okay, we're in project management mode. And now I have these perspectives that really allow a focused view of my data without having to mess with a bunch of tabs here, filter and sort manually every time. I can build these kind of pre-made views for that. So I jump into my task pool and I see all my tasks. We just made that high priority one. So if what really matters to me is prioritizing my tasks and picking out a few really high priority ones, I've given myself that ability. And what we have is this really flexible way for you to do it, but also structured. And I think that's the key, where I think this is the best I have seen of maintaining flexibility that Notion really allows and a lot of people are attracted to, while giving structure that a lot of people usually find out they need when things are a mess and they're looking for some solution. And most of the solutions online, however good they can be, usually are opinionated. They're usually formulated around some sort of beyond structure and Notion. They're formulated around, this is my way of viewing life. And there's a lot of benefit to learning from those. However, my personal take and my personal passion is finding these ways in Notion to build in a way that is intuitive. And so that's what we have in perspectives. I think it goes a little deeper than just being building views and databases. And especially as Notion comes out with more features, I'm always curious and I always love to figure out, okay, now that we have some new tools in our toolbox, how can we build even better and build in a way that people find useful and helpful to actually manage their life? Because that's what they want to use Notion for, is to manage their life better, do their work better, have more fun, not get distracted or bogged down with the tediousness or the tedium of finding their information. They can actually focus on what they do and what they love to do without having to ask a million people where to find the information. They can actually do what they're actually good at. And I think that's good for them. And it's also good for the companies that hire them. And I think companies would be really interested in empowering and supporting their employees to actually do what they were hired to do and not have to go and search for their information. It's already built in a very intuitive way for them to find it and enjoyable to use as software. So that is perspectives. Let's call it 3.0. There was the original perspectives, which was the databases. It's kind of clunky, where you also had cross-application navigation below it. If you don't know what that means, go watch that old video, but not really that important anymore. And we had to sort them by numbers, and we had to, every view also had to have its own database. And then we figured out sync blocks, putting the database in sync blocks. We got rid of the cross application thing. We started using call outs and making things a lot cleaner, I think, aesthetically. And now this 3.0, I think, is really minimal and functional. I love to still implement call out blocks, although you may have noticed that the template that I use is a little different. Again, you can kind of tweak it however you want. So like in this case, the page content has the call out block around it, and the navigation does not have it around the navigation. However, that new template that I made in this video is the opposite. So we've got the call out block around the navigation, but then each page body would be empty. So still, I'm playing around with what I like, what I think is best, what I think feels good. And you are totally free to move it around, tweak it to your liking. And of course, like I say in every video, would love to see what you're doing with it. You can find me on Twitter at @TheJoshRed. And Of course, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. We're on YouTube weekly. This has been the 3rd month in a row that I have uploaded. And so I'd love to have you along for the ride and let me know what kind of content you find useful and you want to see. And we'll see you in the next video.